Welcome back. It's Jessiy, and I am going to be recording Chapter 2, I Wish, from the Book of Shadows, the series Sweep by Cate Tiernan. I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for tuning in.
You have to admit, he's good looking, Bree pressed, leaning against my kitchen counter. Of course I admit it. I'm not blind, I said, busily opening cans. It was my night to make dinner. The washed, cut-up chicken was sitting naked in a large Pyrex dish. I dumped out a can of cream of artichoke soup, a can of cream of celery soup, and a jar of marinated artichoke hearts. Voila! Dinner. But he seems kind of a player, I continued mildly. I mean, how many people has he gone out with in the last 2 weeks? 3, said Tamara, unfolding her long, skinny frame onto the bench of our breakfast nook. It was Monday afternoon, the beginning of the 3rd week of school. I could safely say that Cal Blair's arrival at a sleepy town of Widows-Vale was the most exciting thing that had happened since the Millhouse Theater burned to the ground 2 years ago. "Morgan, what is that?" "Chicken Morgan," I said, "delicious and nutritious." I reached into the fridge for a Diet Coke and popped the top. "Hey, toss me one of those," Robbie said, and I got him one. "How come when a guy dates a lot he's a player, but if a girl does, she's just picky?" "Because it's so not true," Bree protested. "Hello, girls. Hello, Robbie," my dad said, wandering into the kitchen, his brown eyes somewhat vague behind his glasses. He was wearing his usual uniform, khaki pants, a button-down shirt, short sleeves because of the weather, and a white t-shirt underneath it. In the winter, he wears the same thing except with long-sleeve shirts and a knit sweater vest over it all. "Hey, Mr. R," Robbie said. "Hi, Mr. Rowland," Tamara said, and Bree waved. Dad glanced around distractedly, as if to make sure that this was really his kitchen. With his smile at us, he wandered out again. Bree and I shared a grin. We knew that soon he'd remember what he'd come in to get, and he'd return for it. He works in research and development at IBM, and they think he's a genius. Around our house, he's more like a slow kindergartner. He can't keep his shoes tied, and he has no concept of time. I stirred the mixture in the glass pan and covered it with foil. Then I grabbed 4 potatoes and scrubbed them in the sink. "I'm glad my mom cooks," Tamara said. "Anyway, Cal has gone out with Suzanne Herbert, Raven Metzler, and Janice." She ticked off the names on her fingers. "Janice Uto?" I squealed, putting the dish in the oven. "She didn't even tell me about it." I frowned and added the potatoes. "God, he sure doesn't have a type, does he? It's like one from column A, one from column B, and one from column C." "That dog," said Robbie, pushing his glasses up on his nose. Robbie was such a close friend I hardly noticed it anymore, but he had terrible acne. He had been super cute until 7th grade, which made it all the harder on him. Bree wrinkled her forehead. "The Janice Uto thing, I can't figure out, unless she was helping him with his homework." "Janice is actually really pretty," I said. "She's just so shy you don't notice it. I can't figure out Suzanne Herbert." Bree almost choked. "Suzanne is gorgeous. She modeled for Hawaiian Tropic last year." I smiled at Bree. "She looks like Malibu Barbie, and she's got a brain to match." I ducked as Bree tossed a grape at me. "Not everyone can be a National Merit Scholar," she said snippily. She paused and then said, "I guess none of us are wondering about Raven. She goes through guys like Kleenex." "Oh, and you don't?" I teased her, and was rewarded by another grape bouncing off my arm. "Hey, Chris and I have been together for almost 3 months now," Bree said. "And?" Robbie prompted her. Self-righteousness mixed with rueful embarrassment crossed Bree's face. "He's bugging me a little," she admitted. Tam and I laughed, and Robbie snorted. "I guess you're just picky," Robbie said. My dad wandered into the kitchen again, got a pen from the pen jar, and headed out. "Okay," Bree said, opening the back door. "I better get home before Chris freaks out." She made a face. "Where have you been?" she said in a deep voice imitation. She rolled her eyes and left, and moments later we heard her temperamental BMW Breezy take off and chug down the street. "Poor Chris," Tamara said. Her curly brown hair was escaping from her headband, and she expertly twisted it back underneath. "I think his days are numbered," Robbie said, taking a sip of soda. I pulled out a bag of salad and ripped it open with my teeth. "Well, he's lasted longer than usual," Tam nodded. "It might be a record." The back door flew open and my mom staggered in, her arms full of files, flyers, and real estate signs. Her jacket was wrinkled and it had a coffee stain on one pocket. I grabbed the stuff from her hands and set it on the kitchen table. "Mary, Mother of God," she muttered. "What a day! Hi, Tamara, honey. Hi, Robbie. How have you two been? How's school so far?" "Fine, thanks, Mrs. Rowland," Robbie said. How about you? Tamara asked. You look like you've been working hard.
You could say that, my mom said with a sigh. She hung her jacket on a hook by the door and headed to the cabinet to fix herself a whiskey sour from a mix.
Well, we better head out, Tamara announced, picking up her backpack. She kicked Robbie's sneaker gently. Come on, I'll give you a ride. Nice seeing you, Mrs. Rollins.
See you later.
Bye, guys, my mom said, and the back door closed behind them.
Gosh, Robbie's getting tall. He's really grown into himself. She came over and gave me a hug. Hi, sweetheart. It smells great in here. Is it Chicken Morgan?
Yep, with baked potatoes and frozen peas.
Sounds perfect. She drank from her glass, which smelled sweet and citrusy. Tiny sip, I asked. No, ma'am, she replied, as she always did. Let me change and I'll set the table. Is Mary Kay here? I nodded. Upstairs with some of the Mary Kay fan club. Mom frowned. Boys or girls? I think both. Mom nodded and headed upstairs, and I knew that the boys, at least, were about to get the boot. Can I sit here? Janice asked at lunch period the next day, pointing to an empty spot on the grass of the school's courtyard next to Tamara. Of course, Tamara said, waving a handful of Fritos. We'll be even more multicultural. Tamara was one of the few African Americans in our overwhelmingly white school, and she wasn't afraid to joke about it, particularly with Janice, who was sometimes self-conscious about being one of the very few Asians. Janice sat down cross-legged with her tray balanced on her lap. Excuse me? I said pointedly. Is there anything interesting, news you'd like to share? Confusion crossed Janice's face, and she chewed the school's version of meatloaf and swallowed. What? You mean from class? No, I said impatiently. Romantic news. I raised my eyebrows. Janice's pretty face turned pink. Oh, you mean Cal. Of course I mean Cal, I practically exploded. I can't believe you didn't say anything. Janice shrugged. We went out just once, she said, last weekend. Tamara and I waited. Can you embellish, please? I pressed after a minute. I mean, we're your friends. You went out with the single best-looking guy on the planet. We deserve to know. Janice looked pleased and embarrassed. It didn't really seem like a date, she said finally. It's more like he was trying to get to know people around the area. We drove around and talked a lot, and he wanted to know all about the town and the people. Tamara and I looked at each other. I said finally. So you're not hooking up or anything? Tamara rolled her eyes. Be blunt. Why don't you, Morgan? Janice laughed. It's fine, she said. And no hooking up. I think we're just friends. I said again. He is friendly, isn't he? Speak of the devil, Tamara said softly. I looked up to see Cal ambling towards us, his lips curved in a smile. Hey, he said, crouching down on the grass next to us. Am I interrupting anything? I shook my head and drank my soda in an attempt to look casual. Are you getting settled in? Tamara asked. Whittlesville is pretty small, so it probably won't take you too long to figure out where everything is. Cal smiled at her, and I blinked at his supernatural face. By now I expected to have this reaction when I was around him, so it didn't bother me as much. Yeah, it's pretty here, Cal said. Full of history. I feel like I've gone back in time. He looked down at the patch of grass, absently stroking a blade between his fingers. I tried not to stare, but I found myself wanting to touch what he touched. I came over to ask you guys if you would come to a party of mine this Saturday night. We were all so surprised that we didn't say anything for a second. It seemed gutsy for a relative stranger to throw a party so soon. Rollins! Recalled from across the lawn, then came and sank down gracefully on the grass next to me. Hi, Cal, she said, giving him a beautiful smile. Hey, been going around inviting people to a party this Saturday. A party? She looked like this was the best idea she'd ever heard. What kind of party? Where? Who's coming? Cal laughed, leaning back his head so I could see the strong column of his throat, with its smooth, tan skin, and the V of his shirt hung a worn leather string with a silver pendant dangling from it, a 5-pointed star surrounded by a circle. I wondered what that symbol meant. If the weather's all right, it'll be an outdoor party, Cal said. Mostly I just want to have a chance to talk to people, not at school. I'm asking most of the juniors and seniors. Really? Bree's lovely brows arched. Sure, Cal said. The more the merrier. I figure we could meet up outside. The weather's been beautiful lately, and there's this field at the edge of town, right over Towers Market. I thought we could all sit around and talk, look at the stars. We all stared at him. Kids hung out at the mall. Kids hung out at the movie theater. Kids even hung out at the 7-Eleven when things got really slow, but nobody ever hung out in the middle of an empty field out past Towers Market. This isn't the kind of thing you usually do, is it? He asked.
Not really, Bree said carefully, but it sounds great.
Okay, well, I'll print up some directions. Hope you guys can come.
He stood smoothly, gracefully, the way an animal rises. I wish you were mine. I was shocked that my brain had formed the thought. I'd never felt that way about anyone, and Cal Blair was so out of my league that wanting him seemed stupid, almost pathetic. I shook my head. This was pointless. I would just have to snap out of it. When he was gone, my friends turned to one another excitedly. What kind of party is this? Tamara wondered out loud. I wonder if there'll be a keg or something, Bree said. I think I'm going out of town this weekend, Janet said, looking half disappointed, half relieved. The four of us watched as Cal approached Bree's other friends, who were hanging out on the benches at the edge of the school grounds. After talking to them, he headed to the stoners clustered by the doors of the cafeteria. The funny thing was, he looked just like each crowd he spoke to. When he was with the brains, like me and Tamara and Janice, he was totally believable as a gorgeous, brilliant, deeply inquisitive scholar type. When he was with Bree's friends, he looked cool, casual, and hip, a trendsetter. And when he was standing next to Raven and Chip, I totally imagined him as a stoner, smoking pot every day after school. It was amazing how comfortable he was with everyone. On one level I envied it, since I'm comfortable with only a small group of people, my good friends in fact, my two closest friends, Bree and Robbie. I've known since we were babies, and our families lived on the same block. That was before Bree's family moved into a huge modern house with a view of the river, and long before we'd split up into different cliques. Bree and I were two of the only people at our school who managed to be close, despite belonging to different groups. Cal was universal in a way, and even though I was nervous, I wanted to go to that party.
Thank you for listening to Chapter 2 of Book of Shadows from the series Sweep, written by Cate Tiernan. That was I Wish, read by Jessiy, aka me. It was a pleasure, and I hope to see you for Chapter 3.